Welcome to the Cyber Tech Podcast, inside the minds of everyday IT and cyber pros, powered by AspireByte, hosted by Mike Fierros. Real life stories, real careers, real world experience. Each episode brings you honest conversations with people working across the tech field, from cybersecurity and information security to IT, sharing lessons learned, challenges faced, and what it truly takes to build and sustain a career in tech. Let's get into it.
Hey guys, how's it going? Cyber Tech Podcast, inside the mind of everyday IT and cyber pros. This is Mike, and this is episode number 37. But as always, before we get into episode number 37, if this is your first time listening to the Cyber Tech Podcast, be sure to subscribe to the AspireByte YouTube channel, where we share full Cyber Tech Podcast episodes, clips, and tech-focused content. And while you're there, like and share the videos to help spread the word. You can also listen to every episode of the Cyber Tech Podcast on Spotify. If you've been enjoying the show, give us a 5-star rating, drop a quick comment, and share it with others. It helps us reach more people, keeps the mission going. Thank you for everyone who's already done that. Want to explore more? Visit AspireByte Hub at aspirebyte.card.co. It's your all-in-one starting point for free resources, podcasts, links, merch, and more. Speaking of merch, check out the AspireByte shop at aspirebyte.myspreadshop.com throughout the mission wherever you go. Thank you for all your support, as well as we've reached over 100 subscribers on the AspireByte YouTube channel, so I really appreciate that, guys. And let's finally get to episode number 37. This is really going to be a really good one right here, guys. The gentleman I have on here, he has a law enforcement background, as well as working in IT support, but also cyber, and he does a lot of investigative work. I know there's been a few students that hit me up, a gentleman that hit me up recently to see if I know anybody or any organization that does some kind of investigative type work when it comes to cyber, technology, and law enforcement things and whatnot. And I told him I got a gentleman coming up here soon here. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Dennis Keefe. He is a OSINT Analyst, private investigator of Panhandle Investigative Solutions, LLC. How's it going, Dennis?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I appreciate you getting on, Dennis. I really wanted to get you on here because a lot of content you share on LinkedIn is really valuable, especially the OSINT stuff, because you'll be the first person that I get on here that's actually worked in law enforcement, IT, cyber, doing investigations. And there's been a lot of folks, especially where I'm from here in Arizona, that's kind of asked me those type of questions. And even though I have a corrections background myself, I'm not pretty into a lot of the digital forensics, digital investigations, background checks and stuff like that. So I think this is gonna be a special episode for those folks that we know that are still in law enforcement that are thinking about pivoting in cyber or maybe IT. And I think this is gonna be a awesome episode to show students and those folks that career in cyber and IT is possible coming from a law enforcement background. Who are you, and how did you get into OSINT and technology?
My name is Dennis Keefe. I'm originally from the Boston area, born and raised up in New England. Been down here in Florida for 32 years now. Worked in corrections, law enforcement, and I've always loved technology since when I was in 5th grade. Our school got an Apple IIe computer.
Oh, nice.
And I immediately kind of got hooked on it and became the teacher's assistant to help the kids boot it up with the big giant floppy disks and everything.
Yeah.
So if anybody wanted to use it, I would go help them get it booted up and everything. So ever since that, and then as a kid watching war games, I was hooked. Unfortunately, my parents could never afford to get me a computer for Christmas or whatever. Every year I'd ask for one, never get one. So that's kind of a disappointment. But I've just always loved tech, and I love learning new things. And if I hear if there's some new thing out, I always have to try it out. Get my hands on it, at least see how it works. I like figuring out how things work. So I had known a lot about technology just from self-learning, but I never actually got certified until just a few years ago. I got my Security Plus and then my CYSA Plus. Awesome. So I kind of took the plunge into actually getting certified, because even though I kind of knew a little bit of a lot of things, I didn't have anything to back that up.
And I think it's a special, unique skill sets to have, especially in the law enforcement. Working from law enforcement going into tech. When you got interested with tech, Dennis, did you go into law enforcement first and then to IT?
About the time I got into corrections in '95, I got my first computer. I didn't get my first computer until 1997 when I went and bought one. But so it's kind of I worked in corrections and law enforcement, but I always loved technology, and I always thought to myself, I kind of wanted to go into the law side of tech, doing law enforcement through technology.
That's awesome. Like I remember personally myself working in corrections here, the local sheriff's office in Arizona, and I remember I had a couple other coworkers that were also into technology, and I remember you know how it is in corrections, Dennis. You do the shift change, you do the counts and stuff. And I remember
Mhm.
just talking about the latest and greatest. Like I've always been an Apple guy. My coworker was a huge Android guy, and we would just like talk about technology and every time we do our walks and our pass downs and stuff like that for those of you familiar with corrections environment. And I think it's interesting thing to think about, like when we look at cyber and tech support IT, we forget at times that there's there's a support staff supporting the officers whether out in the streets or in the prison, in the jails, and we forget about that whole support element in law enforcement. There's folks that set up the tough books. There's folks that make sure that GPS is working in the cars. There's folks that do all kinds of stuff. Kind of tell us how you got into that when you're working in corrections, Dennis. How you got into that place?
I always fascinated just learning things. I jumped into Linux, started learning how to, play around with Linux. To me, it was just interesting that you could actually have an operating system that wasn't Windows. It was something free, and you could just try different distros whenever you wanted, throw them on an old machine, and have a working computer. It just seemed like it was cool because it was not everybody could do it. So I kind of thought that was pretty cool to experiment with that. And when I was in law enforcement, I had a friend that worked with me on another shift, and he was real smart as programming wise. It worked out that during my law enforcement is when we really transitioned into. When I first started, we didn't have like a mobile data terminal in the cars. We just got all our calls on the radio. So it was in the early days when all that stuff started coming out. So my buddy was building like our own little database solution,
Nice.
using like Lotus 97, and we were making things to help the other officers kind of keep their logs on their computer
Nice.
now that we had in-car computers. So he was way more, advanced at it than I was, but I always followed what he was doing and kind of helped him out and learned alongside of him. But it was kind of cool just to build something that helped everybody be more efficient.
Yeah, no, that's actually really cool. Like I've never been on the street, peace officer myself. That's so awesome that you guys did that. Like you guys are patrolling the streets, doing your documentation, your debriefings, your briefings, and at the same time, your coworker are just building something out of nothing. And I think to benefit the officers, the staff, when you guys did that, did you guys present it to the chief or like present it to like the admin to be like, hey, kind of want to try to implement this?
As we were tinkering with it and sharing it with the people on our platoon, then the IT department within the agency was kind of steadily ramping up, and then they built something into the mobile data solution that took
Oh,
care of
that's
all of
awesome.
that. But it was kind of like before all that rolled out, we had a little working model to help everybody be better organized.
That is really cool. I love that. I love that. That just creating something out of nothing right there to benefit what you guys are doing. That's really cool. And then when you got into that, and you said IT is ramping up, did you pivot into like as a peace officer into IT at that point?
I tried to.
Yeah.
The same guy that was doing that stuff, he, like I said, he's a really smart guy. And he, at the time, we didn't have, that was a long time ago, over 25 years ago, 20 years ago. So there wasn't a criminal investigation side of for tech. And he was like the first person that they put in that position because of his, so I would go volunteer on my days off,
Oh,
not
nice.
getting paid, but I would
Yeah.
go just on my days off and go work alongside of him, do search warrants, seize computers and stuff like that, and kind of see how the process worked. But I never was able to work my way into that position. It was kind of slow to get rolled out at the beginning. So
So from there, Dennis, like, did you stay with that department? for a little bit, and then you moved down?
Yeah.
How that?
Total. I worked in law enforcement for 10 years total.
Nice.
And then the shift work was kind of wearing me down. We wanted to adopt some kids. We had to, so we ended up adopting 3 more children. So that just was really difficult. Shift
Yeah.
work and all that goes along with that. So I kind of stepped out of that. Did some other things for a while. Did real estate, just trying to pay the bills and stuff. And then kind of worked my way into technology.
Is that when you started your OSINT things, like or did you have training when you got into IT?
Like a few years ago, I decided I'm going to just go ahead and start getting up. I was getting up at like 4:30 in the morning, and I just told myself I'm going to get up every morning before the day starts because I work from home, and I'll do like 2 hours worth of my training first, so I can move towards that certification. And I did that. I got those certifications, but somewhere along the way, and I don't remember exactly when, on LinkedIn, I stumbled on something about OSINT, and I didn't even know what OSINT was a couple of years ago. So I thought that's pretty interesting that you can find all that information. So I started digging into that and some of the training, and that was really cool to me because it kind of fed my curiosity of how to find things that are just readily available to you. You just learning the tricks of how to find things was really interesting. So I kind of, it was harder to get into cybersecurity than I thought. I was a little naive. I was thinking, oh, if I get a security plus, I should be able to get a job, no problem. But that didn't work. It doesn't work like that. The market's so tough. So then I, went to CYSA plus and figured maybe that will give me a little more, better chance to find something. But I just never got anything in the cybersecurity side. But I just really, really, picked up on the OSINT stuff, and that was the path that I decided to go down.
I think that's really awesome because, like, Dennis, like the big, huge, especially among young folks and students out there, I want to be pen tester, I want to be in the red team, especially the red team, and that's such a, it is an attainable, position. But like I always tell students, like cyber and IT infosec is a lot wider than we think. And myself being on the GRC side, audit side of things, it's not as advertised as I mean, it's more now, but especially your lane right there, your section of the tech world right there, if you will. Dennis, kind of explain what OSINT is for those that don't know.
OSINT is open source intelligence, and it is basically information that you can obtain online in a passive manner, like not engaging with people. It's all, it's out there, and you can obtain it without ever contacting the person. It's just public facing information. There's different ways to get to it, using advanced Google searches and things like that, and just knowing little ways to navigate through all of the information. It's pretty much everything that anybody can access. So it's good also for yourself to know, like, see what your digital footprint is, or your family members. Like, does your family overshare a bunch of stuff? And just kind of be conscious of what is actually accessible by other people. And you may have family members also that you have your stuff locked down, but then they're sharing all of their photos of you, and people, you're getting exposed there. So
ever since social media, you remember, Dennis, like, 90s, early 2000s. I mean, there was MySpace. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, MySpace there, but like it wasn't advanced as social media is now. And so, growing up without social media, it was just normal. Like, I tell students, like, I was not a grade A student. I was hanging out with the wrong folks, and I tell students, watch out for your digital footprint. But I told them I'm glad I didn't have social media in like 1997, 96, 97, because like I was a student that was hanging out with the wrong folks and whatnot. So, but at the same time, you're right. Like, even as adults, we have to watch out for a digital footprint, and that's such a especially looking for a job in this market, working for, like, someone like Palo Alto, or just like a MSP, or local IT shop, or even within the organization. They're gonna scrub the social media. Like I can imagine, Dennis, you would be someone that, if Palo Alto was going to hire someone like Dennis, we want to hire you to look over the backgrounds of 5 individuals we're going to hire, and want to make sure they're digital footprint, there's nothing that's gonna. We want to see who they really are and whatnot. Is that your kind of role, if you will?
Right now, I do a lot of due diligence, like I said, and it's doing like comprehensive background checks on maybe somebody that's going to be hired by a company, kind of see if there's anything there that may be a negative impact on the company if it came up later. Some cases are maybe a client has been received a threat or something, and they're not sure if it's credible or if they should even be concerned. So they want to take a better look and see, is this person, are they becoming more aggressive in their social media posts or have access to weapons, things like that. That's really in like litigation support, just digging into people's background. And a lot of it is people think that stuff is, oh, that was years ago, I don't have to really worry about it, or I deleted that photo. They don't realize it's still there, and whether you forgot about it and maybe deleted your Facebook account or just abandoned it and then started a fresh one because you made some changes in life, if you've left all that out there, it can still be found. So
what kind of advice can you get to students, Dennis, when it comes to their digital footprint, do's and do nots, when it comes to having your digital footprint out there, especially for students that are trying to get into the cyber field, IT fields, and want to make a career out of it?
It's hard to tell people, hey, beware of that photo, what you post, and they may not think about it now, but down the road, they just really need to be mindful, and they also need to be mindful of what their friends are sharing. Like if they're allowing, their friends to post pictures of them that they probably may not have posted themselves, so they kind of need to be conscious of what their friends are doing too, because they may have some photos they don't want out there, and people are posting them or posting up, tagging them, and putting things on their profile. So lock down your stuff as best you can to keep people from tagging you in posts that you may not want to be tagged in or associated with. It's hard because, like I said, even your family members that are close to you could post stuff that it may not be like terrible for an employer, but you just don't want it out there. And if somebody wanted to find you, they call it backing into a profile, where you go find a family member, work backwards to see what they've posted about the other person, tag them at events, things like that, locations. So I mean, it's hard to do because there's so much out there. It's so easy to post a photo and put things online or have friends put stuff online. You got to stay on it and kind of monitor that stuff. Be mindful of it.
Especially for parents that they're still under your roof, and you definitely want to see what apps they're using, what they're sharing, and it's such an important thing because like there's a lot of folks under that they're very malicious, and we have to kind of make those proactive steps to kind of minimize that. Are there any safe, like, ethical ways students can practice OSINT?
One thing that's good to do is to get like a VoIP number and use that to give to everybody. And don't give out your primary phone number, because even if you don't give it to a lot of people, or you think you're being selective of who you give it to, if one of your family members has your phone number in their phone and they sign up, they download an app and the app wants their address book, then you've just exposed your personal primary phone number to whatever app that they've allowed to scrape the address book. So that's a good thing. It's easy to set up a VoIP number. I use my sudo, which is like $20 a year. So you get a VoIP, then you just share it with your family. Just tell them, put this. They don't know what your phone number is half the time, anyways. These days, everybody just has the name and a profile in the phone. So just say, hey, let me put this number in for me. And then if their stuff gets scraped or whatever, it's just giving your VoIP number and not your personal number.
Yeah, I think it's a really good gold nugget you gave right there, because I remember back in the days having a phone number, but it was tied to your home, and we didn't have cell phones back then. At least those of us that couldn't afford it. And nowadays you can just change your phone at will. But I think that's a good way to, especially for these friends, especially in high school students where they're friends one day and then they leave high school and then see it for years again. And so I think having that, and that's a good nugget you mentioned about the contact list on the phone, to make sure you minimize that. That's really, really good. Do you think schools should teach students more about digital footprints and how much information they publicly expose online?
Yeah, I think they should. They should maybe find some real world examples of maybe kids that have recently graduated or a little further along that maybe had a negative impact in an interview or something and didn't get a job because of something like that, and try to compile those, and maybe even have those kids, maybe college kids or whatever, come speak or something and do some kind of education, because everything is so just there's really no thought to what they put online, and they think everything's no big deal. So I think they should educate them, because you want kids to graduate, be successful, get good jobs, and you don't want to be punished down the road for something that they did that was when they were just young and foolish, like all of us were.
For someone coming from law enforcement, what transferable skills could help them move into a OSINT or cybersecurity type role?
From the law enforcement side, evidence handling, uh, hashing your evidence files, so to make sure that they're haven't been tampered with. Documentation is huge. Being able to just really do a timeline, write out a timeline of events, and make sure everything is in there, when things were collected and how they were handled. That's very important, and those are easily relatable. And a lot of people that are, maybe good at OSINT and finding things, but some people have a tough time with the documentation side. So
Yeah.
coming from law enforcement, that's drilled into you to
Yeah.
make. I mean, your stuff has to stand up in court, and a lot of times your OSINT stuff is going to have to stand up in court as well.
True. And it's funny you say that, Dennis. It's drilled into you. That's so true. I remember getting into corrections, working in the jail, and like my documentation skill set was horrible. Of course, I think everybody is in the beginning. But you're right. Like, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. They drill it every debriefing, drill it. They overlook all your reports. They drill it in your head, drill in your head. And at that time when I was doing that, I didn't. I was in the grind doing those 12-hour, 14-hour shifts in the jail and whatnot. But like for those working in corrections or working on the peace officer side or in the streets, that documentation, man, that has, and I tell students too, that has helped, it has covered my behind a lot, especially working in IT and InfoSec, because and I'm pretty sure you can understand this, Dennis. Having that law enforcement background, especially when it comes to documentation, your tickets are just like, even if it's just a simple ticket. And I'm at fault with this. And I still do it myself sometimes. There's picture clippings, there's a timeline, and it was just a simple ticket, but like we don't know sometimes the tickets we work on, especially us in the profession, whether IT, cyber side, infosec side, that that ticket may be the ticket that our bosses need to dig into something. Maybe there's a user or client says, hey, maybe Dennis and Mike didn't work on it, or maybe they didn't investigate this portion. But no, Mike and Dennis are good. They document the timeline here. It's time stamped, a date stamped, and whatnot. And but that and I'm sure you can relate to that, Dennis. That's like I didn't realize at that time working the pivotal will be working in IT, and it's
Right.
it's it's helped out a lot.
And working like in corrections, I remember when I worked at the prison,
Mhm.
everything was logged. Like every single event was logged in the logbook. So
Yeah,
that helped. And then going into law enforcement, having to document kind of the same thing, like what you first observed, and you have to allow the person that's reading it to mentally walk
yeah.
through exactly the scenario that you just encountered. And I would
Hmm.
also tell people, don't be afraid of constructive criticism. I always tell people, if you see something I'm doing and you're like, hey, there's a better way to do that, I'm not offended. I love constructive criticism,
Yeah,
because it doesn't hurt my feelings. Sometimes it might sting a little bit sometimes, but
yeah.
if you can learn from it and then be better, then it's worth it.
Getting that constructive criticism, whether from peers, like you mentioned, it can sting a little bit, and just knowing that that's gonna help you. I always tell students, when you get into this field, don't be too comfortable. Stay on your toes, because it's gonna keep you learning. It's gonna keep you from conforming, like to just develop bad habits and whatnot. And I'm sure you are too, Dennis. I'm really thankful for having even just working a few years in corrections and having a taste of that. Like I thought I had discipline, I didn't have this before I worked there and whatnot. So, but I really appreciate the time I spent in law enforcement, because I had no idea, especially documentation, how much it would help.
I would also say, if you are anytime you have the opportunity to be a trainer or train somebody, I would do that because you gain a lot more. I was a field training officer for several years, and going behind somebody and kind of teaching them the right way. It's nice to be able to look back at how you were taught, or like I had some bad training officers that were just horrible, but to be able to like help the people coming up under you, it helps them if you can teach them the right way, and then it helps you because you're going back through their stuff. It makes you sharper. It makes you learn more, and you've got to do some preparedness to be able to teach them. So you build more skills and stuff. So if you, it doesn't really matter what role or whether it's law enforcement or IT, if you ever have the opportunity to mentor somebody or, be a trainer in any way, I would do that.
Yeah, I remember working in corrections. I had an awesome field training officer. I still talk today. He's retired now, but I still talk to him once in a while on Facebook. And you're right, it's one thing working and learning theory and doing all the exercises involved and all the training involved, but it's another thing to be with someone with that much experience. And like you mentioned, whether in corrections, law enforcement, or IT and cyber, and kind of mimicking, if you will, the good habits that they have. This is how you get into the ticketing system, or in corrections, this is how you use your logbook. Make sure this is secured over here. Make sure you have your keys accounted for and whatnot. In IT, make sure no one's shoulder surfing in back of you. If you work remotely, be aware of your surroundings at the same time, because you don't want someone being nosy and seeing some sensitive information. So being aware that that those skill sets kick in, and I love that type of mentorship and having either mentor someone or even someone mentor me, because I always tell folks, and I always remind myself, we don't know everything. We'll never know everything, but like to be with someone like yourself, Dennis, or having that someone else somewhere with you that has experience and mimicking them what they do. And it might not be the same as what they're doing, but taking a little bit from their tool bag and placing it in yours, and you kind of mimicking, if you will, the good habits that each of those trainers and mentors have.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like it's a win-win when you're helping somebody and also sharpening your skills at the same time.
You're given a free vacation anywhere in the world, but there's one rule. No investigating anybody, no OSINT, and no Googling anything before you go. Where are you heading? And could you actually follow that rule?
I would say Rome, because my wife wants to go to Rome one day.
Oh, nice.
But I don't know. It'd be hard not to Google, because I always like to be prepared, before I go anywhere. My wife thinks I'm a little crazy sometimes because I want to know everything about where I'm going and what to expect before I get there. So I have some kind of idea what's going on.
Dennis, you've worked in law enforcement, IT, private investigation, OSINT, and roles centered around helping and protecting others. When you look back at your entire journey, what is the one lesson you hope a student, a career changer, or a technology professional listening today takes away from your story?
I would say just, always be curious. Don't be afraid to try new things, and don't be afraid of constructive criticism, because that, it's step out of your comfort zone. It's hard to do that, but the growth you get from it is just, it's great. Like even doing podcasts, I get nervous doing podcasts, but once they're done, you're like, oh, that was fun. And it was, it worked out okay. But so in order to grow, you got to step out of your comfort zone.
Dennis, I appreciate your time, brother. I appreciate your time. Thank you again. Those of us that still know folks that work in law enforcement, either in corrections or the peace officer sides, and maybe folks that work in these law enforcement departments, and thinking about pivoting into IT, cyber, and there's also those students that didn't realize that there's much more to the tech world than just regular IT and cyber stuff, and there's also investigations and forensics and stuff like that, and this is going to be a really gold nugget for someone that wants to pivot in that space. And this is episode number 37 with Dennis Keefe, OSINT Analyst, Private Investigator of Panhandle Investigative Solutions, LLC. And Dennis, I appreciate your time, brother.
All right, thank you.
See you guys.